r/AskReddit, where we will be going through the question, what dark family secret were you let in on once you were old enough? My uncle didn't die in a car accident. He killed his mistress and then killed himself by crashing his car with her body in the trunk. My dad secretly had a vasectomy after I was born, after my mom lying to him about taking birth control resulted in my birth. Our family is great at communication and conflict resolution. The great question here is if you have any siblings? I was number 4. He knew she was cheating when she got pregnant with number 5. My dad's first cousin is serial killer Kenneth McDuff. We saw the America's Most Wanted episode when it aired and were so surprised to hear about a McDuff, not knowing he was a relative. Not exactly dark, but I found out my father wrote adult novels under a pen name to make ends meet when I was a baby. I've been trying to find one ever since. Shame too, you might have been able to launch one of the most successful podcasts of all time if you had. My dad wrote adult novels. One of the best podcasts out there. I always thought my 2 older brothers got addicted to drugs because of their own decisions and the people they hung out with. It turns out that my dad had been feeding them pills since they were about 10 to shut them up. Years I held resentment against them for not being good older brothers like they should have, only to find out that it was my father who I had praised all those years that was truly evil. Edit, wow, wasn't expecting all of this lol. Just to address some of the comments, my brothers are doing mostly fine now. Both struggled but eventually found sobriety. Luckily enough, family didn't give up on them. We have a pretty good relationship now and none of us hold anything against each other. We realize that none of us are to blame for the sins of our father. Not sure where dad is, no contact for about a decade now. In contrast, mom was and still is an angel. With her showing me who to be and my dad showing me exactly who not to be, I think I turned out pretty okay. A lot of the time the cycle just continues, but my brothers and I managed to break it. I'm sorry to everyone who has gone through something similar, thank you for sharing your stories as well. Hope everyone finds their peace someday. Love you. My uncle molested my mom. I don't understand how he is still welcome in the family. Familial SA abuse is one of the most horrifying, damaging crimes, and it is also probably the most covered up, rug-swept crime. I will never understand it either. Quotes. He's a good man who made some bad choices and nobody is perfect and God forgives those who pray. Says my family. That my grandma didn't lose her leg to cancer, she lost it because she got injured helping my grandpa fix the roof, and my grandpa was too cheap to have it fixed properly so he told the doctor to cut it off. Then he beat the crap out of her for life. I remember my mother lying on the couch in pain when I was a kid. My dad apparently would pay for her teeth repair and she had them all pulled at age 35, wore dentures until she passed at 96. That was cruel. I'm religious about my teeth getting fixed. My grandmother married her second husband entirely for money. Her daughters both liked to joke about her intentionally giving him a heart attack. He had heart problems but liked to eat unhealthy food, and the rumor goes she would put extra salt and butter on his food until he finally kicked the bucket. I found out when I was in my early 30s that my mom hadn't only had 4 kids, but actually 6, but gave 2 up for adoption before I was born. Also, I was the last baby she had with some rando before she married my stepdad, and she had intended to give me up for adoption, as well. Silver lining? One of the babies she gave up contacted her a few years after I learned about this, and now I have an awesome new brother. My parents took me to Disneyland for my 7th birthday. I recall landing, going to the park, having a great first day or 2. Then my parents had to step out and take a bunch of phone calls. They sounded very stressed. They kept telling me nothing happened and everything was okay. Eventually we flew home, and surprise. Took an extra couple days to go to a big water park away from home. I fondly remember this birthday and eventually forgot about any of the weirdness. Maybe 10 years later my parents finally told me what happened. My uncle, my dad's brother, tried to self-exit on my 7th birthday. He shot himself in the stomach with a rifle. He was poor, addicted to drugs, no work, etc. He felt depressed. My dad had the life he always wanted, so tried to self-exit. He ended up living. My parents took me to the water park so that we didn't have to come home to him leaving the hospital. By not telling me, my parents let me keep my birthday as my day, not the day uncle tried to exit. Knowing how a 7-year-old's brain works, I probably would have thought I had something to do with it. Your parents are really sweet. They knew how to think like a kid and wanted to preserve your birthday as a happy special day for you. That's incredibly thoughtful of them. My uncle was actually my cousin. He was kidnapped as an infant, and when he was returned a year later, my aunt didn't want him back. My grandparents adopted him, so he was legally my uncle. Kidnapped and then they didn't want him back, what the heck? Excuse me for asking, but was the kidnapping legit or was it set up to get rid of him? This is so sad. My paternal grandmother had an affair with our small town's mortician in the 1940s. She got pregnant and he performed an illegal abortion. The fetus was buried behind the funeral home he owned where we kids used to sled every winter. My dad told me this as I was getting ready to take a ride down the hill on the sled when I was 12. Also, paternal grandfather had multiple illegitimate children around our small town. Turns out one of my best friends was also my half-cousin. Father told me when I was 17. My father was educated, intelligent, honest and moral. The fact that his parents were so wild was absolutely shocking to me. So little kid, you was trying to get some sledding in and you find out you're sledding over your loved one's secret grave? That's awful. It's nice your dad was straight up with you though. My grandpa can't have kids, but my mother still has 3 siblings. I don't know about dark, but here goes. My great-grandfather murdered the mayor of the village he lived in. Why? Because the mayor was sleeping with his mom while his father worked on the field. I think he was 15 or 16 when he did that. I don't know about dark. Proceeds to tell story about infidelity and murder. Here's a lovely tale about devotion to a father. I found out I had a sister who had been given up for adoption. The only reason I found out was the person who informed me no longer felt bound to secrecy after my mom died. And the person who told me had receipts solid enough that I have no reason to doubt them. It also explains why mom freaked out when I told her I'd done a 23andMe test. Great-grandma died from a botched abortion when she got pregnant a 7th time. My grandpa, 15, kidnapped my grandma, 14, from a convent. No one even bothered looking for her thereafter cause she was an orphan and didn't even know who her family was. They had 16 children together. It's extremely upsetting when you dig into many people's grandparents/great-grandparents stories in my country because kidnapping young girls to marry them was considered normal. My uncle SA'd his own younger sister for years and nothing was really done about it. How awful. He was violently murdered in 2001 and nothing of value was lost. Hope you guys liked today's post. Like and subscribe to show support for the channel.